Trucker Dump, episode 183. In this week's trucking news, you'll get winter driving tips from experienced drivers, and you'll learn if your employer can retaliate if you refuse to drive in bad weather. We'll hear about the Department of Labor getting an earful about the newly proposed rules on who qualifies as an independent contractor. Also, those California emissions Nazis are wreaking havoc again, and yet another chink in the electric truck armor. Canada is finally getting ready for electronic logging devices. The FMCSA seeks to modify emergency exemptions. The crazy high harassment numbers in the trucking industry. Sad. And finally, a trucker's rights to bathrooms goes to Congress, and one trucker who really loves Kelly Clarkson. And it's Christmas, so of course, I'll share my rendition of Twas the Night Before Christmas, trucker style. Might want to earmuff your kids for that one. As for listener feedback, One of a Kind and Goose from the Trucker Dump Slack group weigh in on the new format of the show, and Goose also gives us some insight and additional tips on the winter pileup story we covered in the last episode. And last, but certainly not least, we hear a funny delivery story from driver Dave. This episode of Trucker Dump is sponsored by Porter Freight Funding. You can learn more at porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump or give them a call at 205-576-8257. Ho, 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 here we go.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com, resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Ho, 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 ho. Todd McCann here. For those of you who weren't aware who the dork behind the microphone was, welcome to the show. I am a 25-year truck driver, 22 of those over the road. Last 3.5 or so has been LTL. Been loving that, as I say every time, pretty much, because I do love it. I am also the author of 2 trucking ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Life. Trucking Life includes a 9.25-hour audiobook. Those are both great for newbie truckers, but you can also get plenty of enjoyment and information out of those if you're an experienced truck driver also. And right now, that 50% off deal is still going on. You can find that at abouttruckdriving.com. You can get both of those books for just $9.99. What a bargain, as Eddie Murphy would say. I think I will buy me one. So enough about that. Man, oh man, lots of crappy weather out there this time around, isn't there? Yowza, I have managed to escape it, thank God, all week so far, but I have friends and colleagues who have not. They've been running up there in Wisconsin. I knew one driver who got towed 3 different times in one night. Well, that's because we got these stupid tag axle trucks where only the front drives and the back ones are just dead weight back there. They're just there for weight distribution. So they're pretty useless if you're trying to get moving in the snow. They're actually pretty great if you're driving in the snow, like at highway speeds, and that back dead axle just kind of acts like a rudder. It's kind of nice, actually. If you spin out, lose traction, it just goes zzz, and yet you don't spin out. And, your tires spin, but you don't fishtail out and lose control. It's kind of nice. But just trying to get moving is a pain in the butt. And that's what this guy was trying to do. Oh, what a mess. Anyway, I hope you have escaped all this bad weather. I hope you haven't found yourself in any towing situations or anywhere near a ditch for that purpose. But hey, more weather to come. It looks like we're going to be hitting a real cold snap over the next couple of weeks. That's for sure. So everybody be safe out there. And I'm telling you that now because for once I'm actually remembering to tell you in advance that there will not be shows. That will be for Christmas week and New Year's week. There will not be a show. So the next time you are going to hear my voice will be on January 7th. Lucky you. Now, we may have a fill-in on one of those dates. I am not sure about that yet. We will see. Just stay tuned. Keep your podcast app open, and if an episode is there, it will pop up and you'll see it. So, hey, everyone knows Christmas is right around the corner, of course, and I know everyone in my family thanks God in heaven that the evil overlord is one that shops for us, because she doesn't usually wait till the last minute, where I am a procrastination king. And well, we know that because it's Friday again, and here I am just starting the podcast yet again. You know, I'm not going to be doing one for the next 2 weeks, and I didn't do one last week because of that was bad. I had a breakdown last week. I will tell that story at some other time, but it was not a good week, and I was not kicking out a podcast. So anyway, not one last week, not going to have one for the next 2 weeks, and yet here I am procrastinating yet again anyway. I'm such a loser. So anyway, I guess we should just get on with the show, because you know what? I know this is the Christmas season, and you all have better things to do, don't you? Okay, I'll make this short and sweet. Well, as short and sweet as my rambling will allow. All right, to start out, I'm going to give you a Christmas gift by telling you that we are no longer doing recalls. Oh, good grief, you exaggerators. It's not that bad. I mean, I'm sure my truckerdump@gmail.com email inbox will just be flooded with people who say, no, please don't take the truck recalls away. Right? That's going to happen. Maybe not. Anyway, I just decided they were really boring. Nobody really cared. And, you know, if you have a recall, it's likely the manufacturer is going to reach out to you anyway. Now, the only caveat to that is if you are driving a company truck, they are not going to contact you, and you just have to hope, basically, that your carrier does something about it. So, just an advance warning, if you wreck and die in a accident caused by a recall, don't come blame me. So anyway, to shake things up even more, drink! Okay, this is our Love's drinking game, where every time Love's opens a new truck stop, we have a drink. In this case, chug 4 of them. Not while you're driving. Again, never chug while you're driving. Unless, of course, you're chugging coffee. And then you might want to still be careful, because that stuff is freaking hot, right? Okay, so let's cover these. I'm not going to go into all the details because there are 4 of them, but I will tell you that one of them is in Morris, Illinois. There's another in Lancaster, Ohio, Loudon, Tennessee, and Carthage, Texas. Oh, and this is cool. I've never seen this one before. Love's is actually making a $2,000 donation to nonprofit organizations in each of these towns. Morris, Illinois is going to be split between the Morris Community High School and the Morris City Hall. Lancaster, Ohio, split between Meals on Wheels, and Lancaster Fairfield County Charity Newsies, whatever that is. Loudon, Tennessee is going to the Smoky Mountain Service Dogs. Oh, that's cool. And Carthage, Texas is going to Panola College. I'm not sure if I said that right. But anyway, it looks like they are adding 290 truck parking spaces with this. So that is awesome. Always need new truck parking spaces. Now, one thing this article over here on landline.media does not tell us is what restaurants are at these locations. That's interesting. They've always provided that information before. Let me see if I can find another article on this, and we'll get back to you real fast, because I'm always interested in that. You know, I always want to see if there's going to be a Taco John's in one of them. Hang on. Okay, I found it. Where else? Loves.com. So the store in Morris, Illinois is going to be, it's going to have a Hardee's and a Naf. Naf is that Middle Eastern cuisine. I've never eaten there before. I've never even tried it. I'm not very adventurous with stuff like that. And I think I recognized maybe one thing on their menu, and that was falafels or something like that. And I don't even know what that is. I just recognized the word. But anywho, Lancaster, Ohio is going to have a Hardee's. Loudon, Tennessee is going to have an Arby's, and Carthage, Texas is going to have a Subway and a Wendy's. So there you have it. Now, if your memory sucks as bad as mine does, you probably are not going to remember where those 4 places are. That's why you probably need to just get on your iPhone or your Android phone and download the app. That is called the Loves Connect app, and it's free. Download it. It'll give you all the locations, gives you everything that's at each place. It tells you if you can use the rewards cards at the restaurants, all kinds of good information. You can start the pumps from the comfort of your cab. You can reserve a shower and sit in your truck until your shower's ready. Lots of good stuff in there, plus all kinds of special bonuses and offers and things like that. Man, look at me go. Loves, why aren't you advertising on the Trucker Dump podcast yet? What is up with that? Maybe because I've never asked them. I should probably get on that. So anyway, that's enough about that. Landline.media for that story about Loves. Drink! Oh, and hey, another quick note on truck parking. I love it when states take some old facility that they're not using, whether that be a rest area or a way station or whatever, and turn it into truck parking. Joplin did that recently, Joplin, Missouri. The westbound scale as you're heading into Oklahoma, they closed that sucker for good, thank God, and they shut it completely down, and they opened all that up to truck parking. Now, there's not a lot of truck parking in there, but any new truck parking is awesome. Well, the Ohio Department of Transportation has done the same thing. They're opening 2 new truck parking areas. One is, let's see, these are way stations that are converted to truck parking. So if you know where these scales are, that's where it is. These new parking areas are one is in Medina County on I-76 eastbound between State Route 3 and State Route 57. And the other one is in Ashland County on I-71 southbound between State Road 539 and US 250. Now, these are only going to provide about 18 spaces total, but again, any spaces are good spaces. And they also did mention that you can park on the entrance ramps or the exit ramps, also on the shoulders, obviously. But they do say no restrooms will be available. No surprise there. So don't trash up the place, truckers, okay? Because they're opening this truck parking space for us. Don't ruin it for everybody, okay? Now, this is pretty cool. I hope this is going to be a growing trend. They say, so far, Ohio has converted 10 way stations, and they plan to do 3 more in 2023. So not only are we adding truck parking spaces, but we're getting rid of way stations. Boy, talk about a good trade. All right, I found this one on overdriveonline.com. Onward. Boy, these next couple of articles I found on overdriveonline.com are certainly relevant for what's going on right now. Winter trucking tips that could actually save a life. Now, I believe I reported on this last year. This was an article. Yeah, it was written last year about this time and updated for this year. This is an article just with a lot of experienced drivers giving advice on how to drive in winter weather conditions. Some of these are commonly known things. Others are not so common. For instance, I did not think what one guy says in here. Always keep a fuel filter in your truck, and don't keep it in a side box where it's cold or something. Keep it in the cab where it's nice and warm. That way, if your fuel freezes up and you need to swap out that fuel filter, because that's a lot of times where that will gel up in there, you can swap that out and get moving again, hopefully. Things like that, don't try to counter steer if the truck starts sliding. Just, always point your steer tires where you want to go. Things like that. If you want to read everything they say in here, go and check this out. But honestly, the last part of this article pretty much says the thing that a lot of truck drivers don't like to do, and that's just admit sometimes you're not a hero, and just get off the dang road. That's what a lot of these experienced drivers suggest, is if it gets too bad, just get off the stinking road. There's no loss in pride on that. Now, your question may be, but my company is pushing me. My dispatcher's being a big meanie, and he's making me feel bad because I'm not driving in the snow and everybody else is. Well, that is what the next Overdrive Online article is about. And this one is one of those awesome trucking law articles called "Are Truckers Protected from Retaliation for Refusing to Drive in Bad Weather?" So this is a 3-minute video that you need to go watch. Seriously, just go click on the link in the show notes. Just go watch it. It's going to take 3 minutes, and it's chock full of good information. This comes from Paul Taylor. He is from the Truckers Justice Center. I always love his articles on here, and this video was done. They asked him questions about this stuff and put together this nice video. Really, really helpful. So the first question they ask is, do I have the right to refuse to drive in bad weather? Now, the short answer to that is yes, you do. And that's according to the Surface Transportation Assistance Act, which he goes into more detail here in the video. But that basically just says that you do have the right to refuse to drive in bad weather. But you better be darn sure. I think I started the video. I wonder if you're going to hear that on there. But again, you better be darn sure that you are in bad weather. You have to be in it currently, I should say. Like, you can't refuse to drive in bad weather if you suspect that there's bad weather coming, or you look at a weather forecast and say, I'm not going because it's supposed to snow tonight. You actually have to get out in it and try it if you want to refuse to drive in bad weather without there being a chance of getting fired. Now, again, always just talk to your dispatcher and tell them if you're not comfortable in it, that you don't feel right to go. And then if they push it, that's where you start doing these other things. And the number 2 thing is, how do I go about refusing to drive in bad weather? Now, here again, you're going to have to make sure that you are actually in bad weather, and you have to call, or they say on here, prefer to text or send a message on your Qualcomm in your truck or whatever. But it's better to get this stuff in writing, that way if they try to come back on you later on, you can say, hey, I told you why I was getting off the road, why I felt unsafe, and what the weather conditions were. And the last part of this is what type of documentation you need. And for that, he suggests things like screenshots from your phone of weather forecasts, or, if you're in a truck stop or something and you can look at a weather report or something like that, get video, get screenshots. If you can get names and addresses and phone numbers of other drivers who are stuck in the same blizzard and they're refusing to drive, that might help also. Hopefully you're never in this situation, honestly, because, hopefully these trucking companies are learning that it's just not wise to send people out in this kind of stuff, but they're still doing it. But anyway, go and check out both of these articles, especially this video. I'll put links to both of these right here in the show notes, and go check that out. That's a 3-minute video. Just don't even argue. Just get on over there, watch the stupid video, and then get on with your life, okay? All right, let's move on. All right, how about a little follow-up on the whole independent contractor debacle thing that's going on? Started out in California with the AB5 rule, and has extended into the Department of Labor now, where they are talking about a new way to reclassify independent contractors. And honestly, I thought the thing recently on the speed limiters got a lot of comments from truckers. It was like 15,000, something like that. Well, there have been 45,000 comments on this. So a lot of independent contractors are opening their laptops or their phones and putting comments in here because they are not happy about this situation. It is largely negative. They are really not for this new way of doing things. They like the one that was implemented in the Trump era because it was it had the same kind of factors, looked at different parts of what can, they would look at different aspects of your business to consider whether you were an independent contractor or not. But they put a lot of weight on just a couple of those, and it was easier for truckers to be independent contractors because of that. But now the Department of Labor, this proposal is looking at 6 factors, and all of them they are putting on an equal basis, and there's probably going to cause a lot of problems for independent contractors who want to stay independent and don't want to be classified as an employee. So again, like I said, I just wanted to give you a quick little update on this one. You can find this article on landline.media if you are one of these owner operators or independent contractors that is going to be affected by this. Oh, actually, I lied. There are 2 articles about this. The other one is on overdriveonline.com, and that is the one that talks about how pissed off the trucking groups are about this. So go and check those out. Again, one's on landline.media, the other's on overdriveonline.com, and both of them are in the links in the show notes. Wow. Why is it that we cannot have one single episode without talking bad about California? I don't know what it is with them, but this one I found over on overdriveonline.com. It's entitled, Nearly 80,000 Active Trucks Could Be Barred from Operating in California at Year End. What is wrong with California? Do they just not like business? Do they not like to get the revenue from businesses? I don't understand what is going on. But anyway, here's what's happening. Beginning January 1st, there's about 76,000 owners who live in California and operate in California with a pre-2010 emission spec engine. And those people will not be able to operate anymore in that state. So if you have a 2007 to 2009 emission spec engine, you will be prohibited. You cannot run in the state. If they catch you in some kind of an inspection, you will be shut down and will not be allowed to operate, and they will not allow further renewals on any of these vehicles. Now, if you were in some weird situation where you have a year that of truck that does not match the year of engine and the engine is actually compliant, they're saying you'll be able to like take a picture of the VIN and send it in and, get it approved that way. But boy, what a pain in the butt. And like I said, I just don't know what California has against money. Well, or business for that matter. They seem to really have it out against truckers. They have a huge supply chain problem out there. And with this AB5 thing going on, it's limiting truck drivers and what they can do. And now this. Well, just keep it up, California. I have no more words to say. As our mamas always said, if you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Anytime we talk about emissions problems, we always tend to talk about electric trucks, and specifically the Tesla semi-truck. And that brings to the forefront an article that was pointed out to me by CC in the Trucker Dump Slack group. Thank you, CC. This one was on cdllife.com, and she was wanting to know, hey, what do you think about this article? It's called Tesla Semi's Cab Design Makes It a Completely Stupid Vehicle, trucker says. Well, I hadn't really thought about this, but the more I read this article, the more I'm thinking, this guy is right. It is kind of course, it's a weird design. Everybody knew that from the beginning. It doesn't look like traditional trucks. Personally, I don't mind it. It looks a little funky and futuristic, but I don't mind that so much. As the article points out, people really hated those, what were they? The T600s? What were they? Those anteater Kenworths back in the day. That was the first real aerodynamic sloped hood truck, and some people really hated it, but now they're kind of cool. I mean, I kind of like those vehicles, and many of the trucks you see on the road today have, aerodynamic designs. They're not all these long nosed Peterbilts anymore. So the look doesn't bother me. That it actually does bother this trucker here, but, what they're really talking about is the ergonomics of this vehicle and how silly it is. For instance, they look at, I don't know if you noticed, but here in the article, if you click on the link, you'll see that the seat is right in the middle. It's not to the left like it normally is over on the driver's side. The driver's side is the middle of this truck. Now, they say that's for visibility reasons because you can look out, the way it's kind of pointed and tapered in the front, that you can look out both big windows on the sides and you can get a lot of view from all around you. And of course, you still have the big mirrors out there. It's not all just electronic cameras and stuff like that for the mirrors. There's still actually mirrors on this truck. And, he's just saying that it's not very practical. One, because if you have to pay a toll, or something like that, or you need to check in at a shipper, receiver, you're going to have to actually stand up and go over by the window. If those windows even open, I don't know if they do or not. It does not say, but that's an interesting concept. I didn't think about that aspect of it. Another thing he points out is the door placement. These are not traditional doors. If you haven't noticed it, it's more like an RV where, the door is back on the passenger side back by like behind the passenger. Well, there's no passenger seat, but where the passenger seat would be, it's actually behind there. So his point is anytime you get into this vehicle, you're wasting all that space because you basically need a corridor to get to the driver's seat. So you basically need a hallway and you can't put anything there. You can't put a table there or cabinets there or a bed there or anything like that. Horrible design, he says. And he also points out, since there's only one door, sometimes you don't want to get out of that one side. For instance, he mentions that he was in some snow and it was much easier for him to get out on the passenger side of his semi, instead of the driver's side this time. But what if it had been the other way around and your only door is on the passenger side and you have to get out that way? Doesn't seem very practical, does it? Also, he says this design could cause a dirtier cab. And on that same note, on just being able to get out real fast on your left-hand side, he says every time you get in this truck, you are going to be tracking mud, snow, dirt, whatever, across the floor of your entire truck to get up to the front seat. And that is true. I mean, I know when I was an over-the-roader that I never drove in actual shoes. I always had these house shoes that, went up the back of the hill. They weren't like flip-flops or anything, but they were actually kind of like driving moccasins, really. And, I would get in. The evil overlord had a rule that as soon as you got in, those shoes did not leave that front area. I mean, you could put them over in the passenger floorboard, but you had to take them off right there in the driver's seat. You could not walk around in the back and get everything filthy. And that worked really well. And I kept that up as a solo driver for many, many years. Now I'm driving LTL all the time, so I don't wear those type of shoes because I just don't. I don't want to pack an extra pair of shoes with me. But anyway, that is an interesting concept I had not thought about. I don't want a dirty cab. Some people don't mind dirty cabs from some of the photos we've seen online, right? So maybe that won't bother you. Who knows? Another thing he says about here is windshield woes, mirror mishaps. He's saying these windshields are sloped and they're going to make it harder to clean, and it's going to make it harder to heat the cab because those windows are so big. I mean, you know how hard it is to keep a window defrosted and, standard size window defrosted, and sometimes just keep the ice off of it. And imagine this, because these windows are huge, great for visibility, not so great for having to clean them. And he also talks about the position of the mirrors. And, well, the way the cab is designed, it kind of tapers in the front, like I said, and that means the mirrors stick way far out there, and you're sitting in the middle. So it's really hard it's impossible to just reach out your window and wipe those mirrors down when they get filthy. I guess you'll just have to do that when you're outside, and you can't do that from inside ever. Well, all these are good points. I had not thought of them before, but I can't see anything wrong with his thinking on this. I wonder what other flaws we're going to discover as time goes on with these Tesla trucks. Who knows? Either way, I'm happy you pointed that out, CC. Really appreciate it. Again, CC found this one on cdllife.com. Sticking with electric trucks, here's another black eye for them. Well, not truck specifically, but it's probably going to have the same problem. Found this one on Commercial Carrier Journal. That's ccjdigital.com. Link in the show notes. This one is called Cold Weather is Zapping Electric Truck Range. Oh boy. Like I said, another chink in the armor of electric vehicles. There's been so many different things that have made these vehicles not so awesome. For instance, the fact that, if they run out, you often have to have a truck powered by gas or diesel come out with a diesel generator and charge the vehicle. How about the exorbitant cost of trying to get these cars to market, because all of the mining that takes place for the batteries, how bad that is for the environment. It actually takes more energy and more bad CO2 into the system or into the atmosphere to make an electric vehicle in the first place. Now, again, it does catch up once it hits the road and it's not burning fossil fuels anymore, but still the startup on that is not good. And then what about these batteries a question we have not addressed at all really is, what do we do with these batteries when we're done? How do we recycle them? If we can recycle them, how's this going to affect, the earth when we got all these batteries sitting around like this? So this is just another thing here, and they are specifically talking about cars in this instance. Apparently the North American Council for Freight Efficiency has been testing some of the electric vehicles and Class 8 vehicles and electric cargo vans, but they don't have any solid stats yet. Basically, they're just saying that you can lose about 10% of range for every 10 degrees under 30 degrees. So for instance, there was a viral video that went out, and this was a guy who owned a Ford Lightning, the pickup truck, that's fully electric. And he lost, said he started out with 149 miles of range, but that dropped 75% after only 64 miles. So he didn't hardly have anything at all. He wasn't towing anything. It was just cold outside. And I guess this video went pretty viral. But there's all over the map here. They're saying this is a significant problem. Even Ford, Rivian is another company that has a pickup truck that's pretty popular, kind of an SUV pickup truck. And they're all saying this is a significant problem and one that has to be dealt with. Ford suggested leaving your vehicle inside so the battery would stay warm. Okay. How many people can do that? I guess maybe if you can afford an all-electric pickup truck or an all-electric Rivian, which I believe is even more expensive, that you probably have enough space in your garage. Maybe it's even heated. I don't know. Ford's saying this not that big of a deal because you can plug in the vehicle overnight and it will keep the battery warm. But they're also saying, hey, if you want this to charge better and keep its charge better, you can just not use the heater and just use the seat heater and the steering wheel heater instead. Yeah, that sounds fun. So I guess a lot of truckers probably won't be getting these, because we leave our vehicles sitting for long periods of time. And why would you get something, like me? I'm out all week. I take my electric vehicle, I park it at the terminal, and, it sits there all week long. And if it's, 20 degrees outside, how much am I going to have enough power to get home when I get back? Well, I guess maybe I would if I just used the steering wheel heater and the seat heater and not the actual heater. Not cool. But anyway, like I said, there's numbers in here saying you can lose, 10% all the way up to like 57%. The AAA Automotive Research Center in Southern California is saying that range can drop 57% when the temperature is held steady below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So, wow. Like I said, just another problem with these electric vehicles. There's lots more information in this article if you would like to go check that out so you can argue with somebody if they're all for electric vehicles and think it's the best thing since sliced bread. Here's some evidence for you. Go check it out, ccjdigital.com, or easiest just to click that link in the show notes. I have been a company driver my entire 25 years. And I have to say that if I ever had a company come up to me and say, hey, we know you did the work last week, but we're not going to pay you for 3 months, I'd be like, that's not going to work for me. So I have to ask, as an owner operator, why are you accepting those terms? Yes, I realize that's the way business works nowadays, but you still need to make the payments and put fuel in the truck, right? That's where Porter Freight Funding comes in. If you have a customer who just refuses to pay on time, don't mess with them. Let Porter Freight Funding do it for you. To learn more, you can head over to porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump. Truckerdump is all one word. Or you can head over to a new phone number they set up for just Truckerdump listeners, 205-576-8257. All you really have to do is just create an account at Porter Freight Funding. From then on, it's just a simple 3-step process. You drop off your load, you submit your paperwork to Porter, and you get paid within 24 hours. It's really that easy. And yes, you can just use this for your one-off pain-in-the-butt customers, but you might find Porter Freight Funding so easy to use that you just decide to let them handle all your collection needs. Either way is fine with Porter Freight Funding. And hey, keep in mind that Porter Freight Funding can also help you with other aspects of running your business, such as brokering, dispatching, fuel cards, insurance, or even compliance if you got a question about getting your own authority or something like that. So please help the show by giving Porter Freight Funding a chance to show you how valuable they can be to your business. If you got questions, you can give them a call at 205-576-8257. Or if you're just ready to go ahead and make that account, head on over to porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump. And thanks to Porter Freight Funding for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump and for giving us a cool new phone number. Hey, Canada, you ready to start using ELDs all the time? Well, you better be ready on January 1st of 2023. That's just a couple of weeks away, you know. Found this one on overdriveonline.com. So yes, we talked about this in the past and how Canada had just kind of kept, they kind of kept pushing it back a little bit because it wasn't quite ready. Well, they're going forward with it. It looks like for all of Canada, but there are some exceptions. But basically, if you are running a paper logbook right now in Canada, you will need to comply, and switch over to an ELD device, electronic logging device. Now, they do say there are about 58 devices approved now because that was another issue. They, ELDs have to be registered by the country, by the government, and that was delaying some issues now. But there are 58 ELDs now from 23 companies, so you shouldn't have a problem finding one up there. But as for these exceptions, it looks like, a lot of the big areas, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Ontario, Manitoba, Yukon, they're all going to be ready to enforce the mandate on January 1st. But as for these exceptions, there may be some delays in certain provinces, and that's because provinces in Canada are pretty much like states in the United States. And, sometimes within a state, you have your own particular rules, and that is exactly what's going on up there. So if you are an operator, or you own a company and your truck only operates in one particular province and you don't go outside of there, you will have a separate set of rules, and you may not have to run an ELD, or maybe not right away. They are going to kind of roll these out when they're ready for it, each province is. So if you are from Canada listening to this show and you're curious when you need to have an ELD device in your ELD device, that's redundant, isn't it? Electronic logging device. Yeah, it's kind of like saying VIN number. So anyway, if you're from Canada and you need to know what's going on with the ELD situation, check out this link, and that's on overdriveonline.com. Be prepared, or you may have to go to jail. But Canada, they're really nice up there, so I'm sure it'll be fine. I would hate to go back in this podcast from March 2020 and figure out how many times the FMCSA extended a COVID-related waiver. That they did it a whole bunch, but it finally expired on October 15th of this year. Well, the FMCSA is looking to make changes to these emergency declarations. Found this one on overdriveonline.com. Basically, they're wanting to limit the scope of it. So right now, under current federal regulations, when a president, governor, or the FMCSA issues a declaration of emergency, there is an automatic 30-day exemption from parts 390 to 399 from the motor carrier rules. And this is only basically to, provide direct assistance to state and local emergencies, that the relief efforts and all that kind of stuff. But in this new proposed rulemaking, what they're suggesting is they want to narrow these. Basically, they want to have the hours of service limits to parts 395 and 395.3 and 395.5, which I'm not sure, and I'm too lazy to go look it up right now, but I'm pretty sure that just has the part to do with like the actual hours of service and not what kinds of freight you're hauling. Don't quote me on that because I'm just too lazy to go look it up right now. But anyway, under this new proposal, this automatic relief for 30 days would only apply for 5 days. So not 30 days anymore, just 5 days. And then they could extend that out just 5 days at a time if they need to keep going. Because most emergencies don't need 30 days, like the COVID thing did. You may only need 5, you may only need 10 or whatever. Now, it is important to note that they're only wanting to limit states to this 5-day thing. If the president puts a declaration of emergency out there, it's still going to automatically trigger the 30-day exemption for all of those hours of service from 390 to 399. I keep saying hours of service, but what I mean is those federal regulations, the FMCSRs, I think is what they're called. I don't even remember what that stands for. I am really not prepared this week. Can you tell? That's what happens when you procrastinate. Don't procrastinate, kids. So anyway, if you want to learn more about this, again, this is just a proposed rulemaking right now. And of course, they will be asking for comments and all that kind of stuff. And as they post that, I will let you know in case you're interested in saying something about it. Oh, it's already up. It's in this article. They will be accepting comments through February the 6th. So get on over there if you want to get your voice heard on these emergency waivers. Personally, I couldn't care one bit whatsoever, but maybe you do. Head on over here to overdriveonline.com or just click that link there in the show notes. It really disturbs me that in 2022, I have to report on this kind of a story, but here it is. Found it on thetrucker.com. Now, forgive me here. I'm going to try to do my best to look down through here and give you the summary of this article, but the way this webpage is jumping all over the place from these ads popping in and out, maybe that's why I don't use the trucker.com very often. Anyway, this is a really good article and very sad. Not cool. It's called Harassment High in Trucking Industry. New FMCSA study on crime prevention shows. Why are we still having to deal with this in 2022? They talked to a woman here who is about 5 foot tall, she said. She's dark gray hair. She's 60 years old. And she said she's been called everything from kid warning here. You might want to put on the earmuffs. She's been called a bitch, a whore, a slut. Why? My guess is anytime she was called that is because she was solicited by a dude and she said no, and they were offended and didn't like it and called her a name because they were rejected. Oh, good grief. Anyway, other examples, they said being called undesirable names. 59% of women report having been called undesirable names. 52% of minority males. So apparently we're a bunch of racists and bigots too. And 51% of non-minority males. So even non-minority males like me. Yes, I've been cussed at out on the road, haven't you? Heck, I've been cussed at my work too, and it's disturbing, honestly, that still happens. Receiving threatening words, 38% of women. Way to go, you macho dudes out there. Threaten a woman. That's real tough of you. Good grief. 40% of minority males and 44% of minority males. That's amazing. I meant non-minority males. So dudes like me are more likely to be getting threatened words than a woman even, but, good. I'm glad at least you're threatening someone who could kick your butt, but anyway, it makes me think of those videos every time you see two truckers fighting out in a parking lot, and you see the videos and it's always pretty hilarious, honestly. I mean, I'm no fighter, but I look at that and I just have to laugh. Anyway, this is not a funny story. I should just quit chuckling. But of course, the big one is sexual harassment. Only 8% of minority men and 14% of non-minority men receive sexual harassment. I'm surprised it's that high, honestly. But women truck drivers, 33% of them are exposed to this. Wow. They say that harassment is more likely to happen at truck stops, 23 to 30% more, depending on gender and minority status. 15 to 17% of the time this takes place where you're picking up or delivering, and 9 to 11% is at the fueling station. Well, this doesn't surprise me because the evil overlord often had guys come up and talking to her, and quite honestly, if she'd been super mean to them, they probably would have called her a bitch, whore, and a slut too. But she just was as polite as she could be and just tried to put them off and ignore them. Who knows? She probably got called that behind her name or behind her back many, many times. But that often happened at the fueling stations, which is why we decided I would just wake up in the middle of my sleep and start fueling from now on. And she would not have to do it anymore, which suited her just great. Wasn't great for my sleep, but hey, that is what it is. You do what you got to do. Now, of course, they did mention that crimes like these are more likely to happen in urban areas than rural areas, 42 to 56% in urban areas compared to 26 to 35 in rural areas. That's not surprising. Country folks are just nicer. What can we say? And of course, nothing ever good happens at night, right? That's what your mom used to say, or your grandma or whoever. Well, harassment against women truck drivers particularly more likely to happen at night from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. Yeah, what a surprise. There's a pretty disturbing story in here where that woman we talked about earlier, talked about a guy coming up and asking her to do certain things to him and for him, and she just said no. But of course, she had to stay at that truck stop all night, and how unsafe she felt. Dudes, we should not be doing this. We should not be doing this to women. We should not be doing this to minorities. We should not be doing this to each other non-minority males. Why are we such a violent people? I don't understand it. Just chill the F out, okay? Golly, what is wrong with people? The sad thing is that according to this survey, that many incidents don't even get reported. 42% of women, they don't report them. 57% of minority men and 51% of non-minority men just choose not to report the harassment, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, for the men, but for the women, report that crap, That's the only way it's going to stop, right? And I guess if I'm fair, you could say that men should report it too, but I don't know, if it's just another dude out there threatening me at the fuel pump or whatever, then I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to blow him off and go about my day. But, I'm not going to handle that at work. And as a matter of fact, I have taken care of something like that at work by narking, if you want to call it. But, HR deserved a call over this. And, that gentleman does not talk to me anymore. So mission accomplished. I didn't like him anyway. Another sad thing about this is the reason that we're given that they didn't report these is that 29 to 38% of them said that it wouldn't make a difference. And 17 to 38% said even if they did, they were just going to have to deal with it anyway, which, again, wow. They go on to say women truckers are found to be 2 to 4 more times likely to report being touched without permission compared to non-minority men. Minority women were up to 9 times more likely to report being physically harmed compared to non-minority men. Wow. Similarly, non-minority women are 2 to 6 times as likely than non-minority men to be touched without permission. Let's just say we shouldn't be touching anyone without permission, okay? That just sounds like a wise thing to do. If you don't know the person personally and, don't even go up and put your hand on their shoulder and give them a little pat on the back or whatever. If you don't know them, don't touch them. And sometimes if you do know them, still don't touch them because people don't like to be touched. Personal space, man. Come on. So while it seems like a lot of facts there are a lot more statistics right here in this article. If you want to go check this one out. Again, this is on thetrucker.com, link in the show notes. They go on to say that, there's some fixes, some ways they suggest that things could get better. For instance, adding, enhancing safety at existing trucking facilities, like putting, restrooms, closer to parking areas, having them monitored by law enforcement or safety patrol, things like that. Also, they say providing just additional parking facilities. That a lot of times these harassment things happened, in urban areas where there's limited parking and they're, forced to park on freeway ramps, abandoned lots, things like that. And that puts them at risk. There's been suggestions that truckers should be allowed to carry firearms. Right now, most large fleets will not allow you to carry one in the vehicle, and I'm sure they do that for liability reasons. But, what about, all these riots and things that happened not too long ago and stuff? That's some scary stuff. I don't want to be stuck in the middle of that. And, there's some thoughts saying that we should be able to carry protection with us in the truck and on our person, but often, even the shippers and receivers don't allow you to carry firearms in the trucks at all, or especially on your person, to go inside. So the law is going to change there, but I kind of doubt that's going to happen, especially with the current administration. They're talking about improving communication with the trucking industry to, choose safer plans like safer travel areas. Don't make you go through downtowns and things like that. Try not to have delays at shippers that could cause conflicts and force truckers to park in unsafe locations, things like that. They suggest providing personal safety for truck drivers and also to develop educational materials to increase awareness, like how to spot a sketchy situation, how to how to report those crimes afterwards, things like that, how to report sexual harassment, and just kind of have workshops and personal safety. I'd be okay if they want to teach me some judo so I can karate chop somebody or something like that. That'd be cool, but I doubt they ever do that. But anyway, like I said, this article is chock full of statistics. I went on far longer than I expected to on that one, but you can go check out all the gory details at thetrucker.com. But again, I will say, let's never have to do another one of these stories again, okay? Let's just quit harassing each other, whether it be dude on dude, girl on girl, girl on dude, dude on girl, whatever it is, just quit doing it. Mind your own freaking business and leave people alone, okay? Yeesh. I trust I'm preaching to the choir here. Please tell me I am. Talk about something I shouldn't have to be reporting on. Wow. This one is on freightwaves.com. This one is the Trucker Bathroom Access Act. Really? Yes, really? Can you believe it? Here in 2022, again, we have to sign something into law to say that truckers have the right to a bathroom at a shipper or receiver. How pathetic is that? This, of course, this bill is being backed by OIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association, and WIT, that's the Women in Trucking Association. Of course, the women, the women's group says, more women are entering the trucking industry, and yet that means more restrooms are needed because, women can't just go, well, they could, but they often don't want to just go, hanging out in the wind behind a tree somewhere. A dude can kind of do that and kind of cover himself up, but they neither should have to do that, right? And, Women in Trucking also points out that, hey, we're trying to go for more women in the trucking industry, right? Trying to get more involved in it because there's such a low percentage. Well, you get more of them in, you're going to need more restrooms. And, what's it going to say for a woman to say, hey, I want to become a trucker, but what? I can't pee at the shipper? What the heck? That's not cool. So anyway, thankfully, this is a bipartisan bill. Got one Republican and one Democrat pushing forward on this. So hopefully this will get pushed through pretty darn quick. I mean, if you find out that your senator or your House of Representatives, your House member votes against this, please fire them at the next election. Please, okay? I mean, who's going to vote against this, really? Well, unless they try to tack it on to some other huge bill that's really stupid, which wouldn't surprise me. That's the way we do things here in this country. Anyway, check this one out, freightwaves.com. Wow. Suddenly, I got to go pee. And last but not least, let me report a little story here on cdllife.com. This one is kind of funny, but it really shouldn't be. Pop star files restraining order against trucker who believes she's messaging him. Yeah, this is another one of those cases where a trucker is so desperate for attention and love that they're willing to believe almost anything that is put online. This is called a catfishing scam. Somebody has been pretending to be Kelly Clarkson, the singer, TV show host, whatever she does nowadays, big American Idol winner, get some pretty cool songs. I've got an album of hers. I like it. But she's got this trucker who has shown up at her house a few times and, keeps peeking over the walls and trying to get in. And he keeps telling the guard outside that, Kelly Clarkson is asking him to come to her house and just told him to ring the doorbell and all this stuff. And apparently the guy is 6'3", about 250 pounds. He's a big guy. They got a picture of him here, and he's convinced somehow that Kelly Clarkson wants to meet him. Now, I'm just going to advise you, just in case you haven't figured it out, but if there's a pop star or any celebrity of any kind that is emailing you, texting you, sending you messages on Facebook or Messenger or Instagram or wherever you do your stuff, it's not them. Okay? Just trying to let you know. I know it's just really hard to believe that Zoe Dashnell doesn't want to meet me, but I'm pretty sure she doesn't want to meet me. For Pete's sake. Again, not funny, but kind of funny. So I'll leave you with that one. So that will do it for the news this week. There is no Trucker Grub segment this time around, although I do have a Australian who promised me that he would get me one soon. So yeah, a Trucker Grub Australia style. Can't wait. This is going to be awesome. But for now, let's get on with listener feedback.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right, first up, we're going to hear from our old friend Driver Dave, who has a story for us. He writes, so ain't got enough feedback, eh, Todd? Okay, here it comes. Thank you, Driver Dave. Appreciate that. He says, I remember hearing you talk about a young driver looking for a possible job as a food delivery driver. Yeah, that reminds me of the job I took for 2 whole days, delivering food for Summit Foods, a division of Calabar. So a side note to that driver, don't wear smooth-soled cowboy boots to that job. I thought at the time appearance was important. So delivering to this restaurant, I loaded up the 2-wheeler with stuff and rolled it down the pull-out ramp and threw a large water puddle in the lot and into their kitchen. Got in there and figured they were either very messy or just had a food fight because there was bits of food all over the floor as well as a nice coating of grease on the tile floor. Did I mention I just plowed through a mud puddle? So consequently, I could hardly stand up in there. Next delivery was to a nursing home where I asked where the doc was. The woman started laughing. She brought me to a door through which I had to roll my 2-wheeler and then down a long flight of stairs and into some closet at the bottom. Okay, so loaded up the cart again and went down just 1 step and almost did a Wile E. Coyote nosedive to the bottom with all the groceries. Wow. I grabbed the railing with 1 hand and held the cart with the other. Unfortunately, I only have 2 hands. Do you seriously know how heavy a case of prune juice is? Who drinks that slop? He says, I had multiple cases on the buggy. I somehow got the thing to the bottom. I considered just letting go and picking up the mess at the bottom. I'm glad you didn't. That would have been a real mess. He goes on and says, last delivery was another nursing home and I had to roll the buggy through their dining area. Tile floors again, which had been freshly washed. No stairs this time. Well, you know those nasty brass staples that are used to staple boxes shut? Yep. Well, the buggy had pneumatic tires and yeah, I ran over one of those staples and blew a tire. No, I didn't call roadside assistance. I loaded up the thing, prune juice and all, and ran the rubber flat tire over their clean tile floor. Yep, I'd had enough. Maybe that's why I don't deliver food now. Definitely worked for a young man. I'm sure I made an impression that day on all concerned. Thanks for the podcast, Todd. God bless Driver Dave. Yeah, I can't imagine. I see those guys going down those ramps, delivering to McDonald's and stuff like that. And while those ramps are, corrugated or whatever, they're ribbed so you can, get a little bit of traction. You're wearing cowboy boots. It ain't going to matter one freaking bit. And I have stood in the back area of of fast food before, and I don't know how anybody works in that condition. Those floors are just greasy. I mean, you can stand there and walk. I mean, I can do a moonwalk without ever moving, without ever moving backwards or forwards. Wow, it's amazing. So anyway, great story there, Driver Dave. We've got another from him next week. Well, not next week, the next podcast we have. He's got a bathroom story, so that ought to be interesting. Thank you anyway for that, Driver Dave. Only thing better it could be is if you did that in your own words. Hint, hint. Audio comment. All right, let's get on with Goose. He commented in the Trucker Dump Slack group. This is regarding, I was asking for feedback on the format, the new format of the show and the news and all that stuff. He writes, listen to the latest podcast today, and I'm afraid to say I agree with Steve, but I may not be as articulate in saying it. It feels more like purely a trucking news podcast. Perhaps you could do short interviews every few weeks with different drivers or others involved in the transport industry. I know you started doing some interviews, but we're having time issues, but I quite enjoyed the ones you did. I'm still happy to have a chat at some stage when the planets aligned. I'm sure we all understand your time restraints with juggling advertisers and work, plus you still need to have some home time. I have no plans to stop listening or anything, and I'm keen to see the direction you steer the podcast. I still find it interesting to hear the issues you guys have in the States. Some the same as us, some very different. Anyway, keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Goose. Goose is from Australia, by the way, if you do not remember. I always appreciate that honest feedback. I know it is a purely trucking news podcast, pretty much. Interviews, I love doing them, but they took a lot longer than I thought they were going to. I'll just say that. Usually you're sitting down for an hour or two, probably two, to get the interview down. You're trying to schedule the time, and then you're having to edit the whole thing. And that is more complicated than editing a normal show, just a solo show, which I didn't think that was going to be the case. I thought it would just be a conversation between two people and it would run pretty smoothly. And sometimes it does. And other times you have to stop and take out about 5 million ums and big spaces, pauses in the conversation, or things that just didn't make sense. And you had to go back and do again, that kind of a thing. And, there's people talking over each other that you have to kind of space out and move things around. And it is a much bigger pain in the butt than I originally thought. I would still love to do some of them, but I don't know if I'll be doing any of those really, really long ones. I just don't know when I'm going to have time to do that. But again, I am thinking of ways to change some things around. I also got some more feedback from One of a Kind. She's also in the Trucker Dump Slack group. And she writes, I found your podcast before I became a trucker. I truly didn't understand half of the trucking news, but I sat through it to get to the interviews and opinion pieces. Like Steve, I do miss them. My thought process tends to believe if you want to increase listenership, you need to add some of the fluff back. It's what potential and new drivers look for. Of course, now that I have some experience, I do enjoy the news. By experience, I mean I know just enough to be dangerous. We all know that feeling, One of a Kind. She carries on. I also understand that you are only one person. You have a life and a full-time job. You cannot put the time in that a full-time podcaster or someone with a team full of people can. While I do not understand what all it takes to go into a podcast, I assume it could overtake your life if you let it. I have an idea. It hurts. Quit making me think, Todd. Quit. She says you can do a couple things. One has been suggested of once a month doing an interview or something like that. My thought would be to add a listener interactive segment, trucker tales or some such. Have the listeners write in and tell stories, something lighthearted or touching or just informative. Then all you need to do is read it. It would not increase your workload as much as trying to write articles or set up interviews, but would add that human interest touch. Kind of like they do at the end of a newscast when they talk about horrible crimes and then go into Aunt Bertha's pie at the fair. A palate cleanser, if you will. I do think it as a segment would have many added bonuses. It would add to each podcast without increasing your workload much. If the people want it, they will participate. If you don't have a submission, you could tell one of your own stories or just skip it like you do when you have no feedback or trucker grub segment. That's just my 2 cents. Not much worth in these days of inflation, but it's an idea. Either way, I'll be listening. Well, thank you for that, One of a Kind. I do appreciate the feedback. I agree with you on a lot of these issues. I would love to do an interview now and then, just a small one. Probably going to have to just arrange them for Monday mornings when I'm typically home. Maybe try to knock it out then. It doesn't take too much of my home time if I do that. Cause usually, we're getting ready for bed and stuff like that. And I can go in there and knock out an interview sometime in the morning. I could try to do some more stuff like that. The fluff, I get it. The fluff is what made the podcast. I totally get that. Opinion pieces, information for new truckers, things like that. I'm going to try to work on that a little bit more. As for the driver stories and things like that, I call out for those all the time on the show. I'm always asking for people to write in their little anecdotes, their little stories, little things that happen to them, and I just rarely get them. And, of course, I'd like to have those in audio form. So all I have to do is just take the audio file, drop it in. Usually I don't have to edit that much at all. And you get to hear another voice on the podcast, which is always refreshing and a nice change of pace. But I've even said, I'll just take it. Just send me your stories. Send me a little, if you've got some little informational piece that you'd like to, a little lesson learned kind of a thing, send it in. I'll include that in the show. Often it goes into the, that's what these are. They go into the listener feedback segment. It's kind of in its listener feedback segment, not like its own listener story section, if you know what I mean. But anyway, I can work on that and see what we can do. And if you're out there listening and you have a story, please write in. Tell me about it. Just some funny or cute little story or whatever. I mean, heck, we just heard one from Driver Dave and we've got another one next week. So if everybody can, step it up a little bit and match what Driver Dave's doing, we'll have lots of content here on the podcast. So again, thank you for that feedback. One of a kind. I appreciate the honesty. All right, let's go back to Goose now. You remember that story we were talking about a couple episodes ago? Maybe it was the last episode. I don't remember. Anyway, it was about the winter pileups and some of the things you can do in it. For instance, don't sit in your car, if you can't get out of your car, just sit in your car, but don't stand outside your car. And one of the things they mentioned was to scoot up as far as you could, move your car physically up in the, forward if you can. That way, if, vehicles come in behind you and they start smashing up against you, each other, it would cause a chain reaction and maybe you'll escape it if you've moved up as far as you can up to the next vehicle. And I didn't quite understand why you might want to do that, but Goose has an idea here. He says, again, this was on the Trucker Dump Slack group. He says, I meant to mention, the reason they tell you to minimize gaps on big pileup events is to minimize whiplash. If you're at a standstill and it seems like a high chance you'll get rear-ended, close up the gap between you and the vehicle in front. So if you do get rear-ended, it's one hit, not two, if that makes sense. Yes, it does, Goose. Thank you very much. And he goes on and says, another one that few people teach, but I try to tell new drivers, particularly in cars, is if you're waiting to turn across traffic on, say, a rural 2-lane highway, keep your wheels straight until you're ready to actually turn. Otherwise, if someone rear-ends you, they'll push you into the oncoming traffic. It was a scenario I saw a few times when I was doing the volunteer road rescue. Interesting. Well, it makes perfect sense, though. You got your wheel cranked, ready to turn, and somebody hits you in the back. You're just going to nose right on out there and get hit by an oncoming car. Good tip. Thank you, Goose. Really appreciate it. So there you have it. That is the kind of feedback that I'm looking for. I got a story. I got some constructive criticism. We got some advice. All that kind of stuff right there at the end of the podcast extends the podcast, just as One of a Kind was talking about. And it just adds to the show, I think. It just makes it more interesting for everybody involved. And it makes it easier on me, right? And I'm always for that. Mr. Procrastination here. All right. Well, thanks again, as always, to everyone who listens and or participates. Another friendly reminder that there may or may not be a podcast in the next couple of weeks. If there is, it will be a guest host. If not, I will talk to you again on January 7th. Until then, I hope you have a great Christmas and all that cool stuff. One more quick reminder before the end of the year that if you'd like to help the show, you can purchase those ebooks. That ebook combo pack is $9.99 for both of them. That's 50% off. That does include a 9.25-hour audiobook. You can get that at abouttruckdriving.com. Or if you just want the books individually, you can go to Amazon, iBooks, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your ebooks, Smashwords, wherever, and they'll be $9.99 each if you want to pay full price and be a big dummy. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but hey, if you want to, because you just wanted to get it on Kindle or whatever, have at it. But honestly, you can get the Kindle version with the ebook combo pack. Also, another way to help out the show and Well, for Christmas coming up is if you got some Christmas shopping to do, it's probably a little late at this point to get anything from Amazon. But if you're one of those late goers and you're going to still order stuff from Amazon, you can always use my link, my affiliate link, and that will be in the show notes. And that will also be, where else? Oh, I don't know. Just go to, this episode. This is episode 183. So abouttruckdriving.com, episode 183, and start playing the podcast in the sidebar or at the bottom, depending on if you're a phone or if you're on your computer. You will see a ebook, one of the ebooks, and it says Amazon Kindle on it. And you click on that, and after that, well, you don't even have to buy the books right there. You can go do any of your shopping, and I will get a small cut from whatever you buy from Amazon. It's a great way to help the show and not spend one dime more than you were already going to spend. So with that, just be safe out there and be cool. I don't want you to die because I can't afford to lose a listener. All right. With that, I'd just like to thank our sponsor for the show, Porter Freight Funding. You can learn more at porterfreightfunding.com/truckerdump or give them a call at 205-576-8257. They're there to handle all of your factoring needs. Oh, crap. I almost forgot the traditional reading of 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, trucker style. That's always requested by driver Chris Mack, my friend, who just for some reason really likes that. And I would suggest you give the kids the earmuffs for this one. It's a bit racy for the Trucker Dump podcast. And you know, I had to go all the way back in the archives to find this one on abouttruckdriving.com. This came from December 19th, 2011. And I was just going to play the whole episode. It's only about 6 minutes long. I made it really short because it was Christmas time. But actually, when I was reading the article, the blog post that goes along with it, I had forgotten that I wrote some fluff, as one of a kind would call it, on this one. So since I'm so impressed with myself for this little ditty, I'll just read this and then we'll kick right into 'Twas the Night Before Christmas trucker style. Here goes. Well, it's that time of year again. Christmas is here, and you and your brother have finally settled out of court over that ugly turkey drumstick incident. The house is filled with holiday cheer. Everybody is happy to be together while they snort chocolate shavings, smoke cookie dough, and mainline eggnog. But what about those truckers who didn't make it home on Christmas Day? Well, I've written a poem in their honor. I hope it puts you in a Christmassy kind of mood.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the truck, the only thing stirring was a case of bad luck. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care. Thanks to my job, I wasn't there. The nephews were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of Modern Warfare 3 danced in their heads. With the evil overlord at home in her teddy, hey, it's my poem, and I on the road, we had both settled down to take off a load. When outside my truck there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bunk to see what was the matter. I reached for my clothes, knowing I was certain. Prepared for the worst, I opened the curtain. The moon in the sky gave off such a great glow, it made the parking lot look like it was covered with snow. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a flatbed loaded with big green John Deeres. With the driver outside looking at my truck, I knew right away I had more bad luck. As I jumped outside to check out my bumper, something flew over my head and then took a big dumper. My luck continued as I took it in the eye. It was such a huge load, it almost made me cry. As I looked to the sky, I swore I heard a jingle. I took cover and prayed it didn't need to tinkle. Alas, I did not see what dumped on my head, but I thought I glimpsed something that might have been red. I thought, could that have been good old Saint Nick? Nah, couldn't be. My eyes had just played a trick. So back to my problem, the wreck, not the poop. I called my Nazi safety department to give them the scoop. We exchanged information, and he went on his way. I guess he was too embarrassed to back in and stay. Next thing you know, I was getting a call. The evil overlord sounded like she was about to bawl. It seems that some fat guy had squeezed down through our roof. He didn't seem too happy that it burned his caboose. He was all dressed in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all covered with ashes and soot. She said, "Why would a man be wearing so much fur? I bet he's one of those drag queens. Do I call him sir? His eyes, how they twinkle. His dimples, how merry. This dude must be wasted. I'm guessing it's cooking sherry." His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the sherry had stained his beard like a dead deer in the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and she said, "Holy cow, I think that's weed." He had a broad face and a big old gut. Every bit of him was fat, yes, even his butt. He was chunky and plump, a right jolly old guy. She said, "I'd be jolly too if I was that high." A wink of his eye and a shake of his head. "Are you kidding me, perv? Not even if I were dead." He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings with Doritos and beef jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, and they lurched into flight. As she leveled the shotgun, she had him in sight. As he started to exclaim, she squeezed off a shot. "That'll teach you to let your reindeer poop in my husband's eye." The end. Merry Christmas.
So, with the holiday hiatus, it looks like we won't be chatting again until January 7th. Or we could just keep chatting if you care to join the awesome folks over at the Trucker Dump Slack or Facebook groups. You'll find links to both groups in the show notes, or you can head on over to abouttruckdriving.com and click Contact in the menu bar. Either way, you've got 3 full weeks to get your comments, suggestions, trucker tips, trucker grubs, or your personal trucker stories sent in to truckerdump@gmail.com. Or heck, just write in or send me an audio comment telling me about that really cool Christmas gift you got this year. So with that, thanks for listening and following the show. And while I do want you to have a good Christmas and New Year's, I also want you to stay out of my way. Ball humbug. Okay, so onward with Goose. This is regarding the feedback I was asking about how any of you like the new forecast or format. Forecast format, whatever. Now let's go back to Goose. He wants to comment on how, we were talking about in the episode where, was the story about. All right, let's go back to Goose now. He has some information about the story we talked about. All right, let's. I know when I was over the road, all of these, a lot of regulations in the hours of service just are put on hold. Like you can just ignore them, basically. Lots of parts from 390 to 399. That's pretty much all of those. All of those what? I don't even know what I'm talking about. Yeesh. And last but certainly not least, we hear a funny delivery. And last but certainly not least, we hear a funny delivery. And last but certainly not.